Oshkosh Avenue is to the north there. You can see the roundabouts there. And then North Keller goes down to the south and kind of runs up and joins up with Oshkosh Avenue there at the roundabout. Father Carr's is across the street. Other than that, there's some detention up to the north on the site, but not a whole lot of development immediately surrounding the site, mostly right-of-ways. You can see an aerial here of it, kind of showing the vacant lot, the detention area, and then the roundabout to the north, Interstate 41 there, as I mentioned. Just an aerial here showing some of the massing of Father Carr's and some of the development to the south there. Here's the site plan of the proposed bank and parking here, showing you how the site layout was proposed to be. And we'll get into this. So like I said, this came through before as an SIP, and nothing with the original SIP is changing except for the facades of the building. Originally, all of the other elements were approved as part of the original specific implementation plan proposal. So those are good to go as far as we are concerned today. We are just looking at the facades. As far as ordinance is concerned, this has to meet the commercial design standards. So a minimum of 50% of the cladding material has to be Class 1 materials. As proposed, about 82.5% overall of the facade area for the building was Class 1 material. So in this case, masonry veneer or stone veneer and glazing. So all the windows, the fenestration on the building. The remainder was Class 3, which is a wood, composite wood panel product. So those were the main materials used on this building. Here are the original elevation drawings shown. It's a little bit hard to see them, but you get a sense of them. We'll get into some of the renderings here. So this is what it was proposed originally. You can see predominantly glazing and the stone veneer. Just a few more perspectives showing the building. And then getting into what they're looking to do. They are seeking an SIP amendment. Their proposal as amended will comply with base zoning. So there's nothing for us to deny here. Really, staff wanted this to come back to Plan Commission because the original terms of the original specific implementation plan govern this, unless they come back and amend it. So that's what we're doing here. We just want to bring it back for review here. So these are the proposed elevations. What they are looking to do is they're going to use the same materials, but the overall percentage of Class 1 materials is going to be reduced. Rather than 82.5% of the total area, we're looking more at 59.75%, something more like that for the percentage of Class 1 materials on this building. So the stone veneer and the glass, as I mentioned. What they want to do is they have a north-south mass and an east-west mass, and they really want to emphasize these as different masses. They do want to still emphasize some horizontality in the joints of the masonry and also in the pattern on the wood paneling, but they do want to articulate these as separate masses. All facades are still over the minimum of 50% Class 1, so they do comply with the base zoning. And then also the applicant, just another minor note, is they want to tip the roof a little bit. And we can let the architect explain some of this too, but this is generally what they want to do. So you can see the different masses here. You have one running one direction, the other running the other direction, and you'll see the wood for predominantly for one, and then the stone veneer for the other. Just showing another angle here. And then showing an isometric, or aerial here, I should say. You can see that wood featured predominantly there, and then the stone. And then just another perspective here. And for the recommendation, we recommend approval of this with the following condition, that, and this is pretty standard for what we approve here, or recommend for approval, that they would realize that this is only for these facade changes, and that any future changes to the original SIP would come back to this body for review and approval.
All right, technical questions. Seeing none, anyone here from the audience to speak to this item today?
I'm the architect.
Just step up to the microphone. If you don't have anything to say, we might have a question or two for you.
Okay, yeah, I'm just really here for questions. I did want to say that early on, or back in August, we were really early on in the design process, and so that's kind of precipitated the changes in the plan. We didn't particularly look at wood as the class as lower grade than the stone. It just is, that's the way it is in your ordinance, but we didn't do it necessarily for cost purposes, because actually that material is more expensive than the stone. But so it was a design move that we put in there. In other words, we did it for design purposes. The client asked us to kind of relook at things after that initial planning.
Okay.
Approval.
Anybody have any questions for the architect?
I have one
Go ahead,
comment.
John.
I just want to say, because you're just outside of our new zoning area that's across the road with the 360 degree, and I just want to say that you've done a nice job with property as far as making it appealing on all sides instead of just the front side, you know.
Good, and that was the goal as
Because it's
well,
not in
yeah.
the area, like I said, it's right across the road, but you're kind of.
You're gonna see it from all four sides,
Exactly,
right,
and I'm
yeah.
glad you took that into
Design
consideration.
challenge. To be still visible.
Good point.
Good,
Thank you
thank
for
you.
making that.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Thanks a lot, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else here to speak to the item today? All right, back to the commission.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? Okay, call the roll, Mina.
Crop,
Aye.
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Groth,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Okay, on to item number 2A. Public hearing, zone change from suburban mixed-use district to suburban mixed-use district with planned development overlay, approval of a general development plan and specific implementation plan for development of a bank at 2020 South Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give one presentation for both items,
Okay.
2A and 2B, just because they are kind of integral into the same overall project. So the applicant is requesting a zone change to the suburban mixed use with a planned development district. This is necessitated just because of the corner lot. The difficulties we try to redevelop that lot. A couple of base standards we'll be looking at that are a little unique to this site. Here we can see the surrounding area, completely surrounded by the SMU zoning district. So the overall, this will fit within the character of the area. This is a previous gas station site. I have it up here on the smart board. The applicant would be looking to remove that gas station and redevelop this as an associated bank. So here again is just the aerial of the site. To the west, you have Aviation Plaza. To the south, you have a fast food restaurant. To the north, you have a bank. And then to the east, you have commercial property as well. So here's just a couple of views of the existing development. You can see it does have a large ingress egress that is shared with the facility to the south. Part of this plan would be to maintain that access. Something else this image and the one up on the smart board do a nice job of showing you is, there's a very, very large right-of-way here between the actual property line and 20th Ave. That is as a result of kind of the interchange with the highway as a result of that kind of larger than normal right-of-way. And that will come into play here with some of the requests that the applicant will be making. One note for you, we do have a revised site plan that has been provided. If you read the original staff report, I was continuing working with the applicants to make some changes to help hopefully alleviate some of the concerns related to the project. After that initial report was issued, a revised site plan was provided, and that has been submitted to you today, along with some revisions to the staff report that reflect the changes in the staff report. So this was the original site plan. Applicant was proposing a teller branch for a bank, had 2 tellers and 1 ATM lane. Not working today. So you can see that egress would be continued between this fast food restaurant to the south. So getting into the kind of the site plan, let's talk about the, and now this doesn't want to work either. Yeah, the mouse works at least, so here we go. So here's the revised site plan. So let's talk a little bit about that. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about the access control variances. So there's 4 access control variances that are required as part of this project. The first would be to reduce the lateral clearance along Keller Street from 75 feet down to 25 feet. So that would be the southwest corner of the property here. You can see where that access drive comes in is approximately 25 feet. Typical code for our access control is 75 feet. That is not necessarily out of character with this area. Most properties in the area do have a substandard lateral clearance variance of the 75 feet. So this would be keeping within the area. Along 20th Avenue, same thing, a access control variance to reduce the lateral clearance width. This one's a little bit unique. Yes, technically they are only about 25 feet to 30 feet from the property line. However, they have a very, very large right-of-way there that will functionally act as a much larger lateral clearance. But to meet the code, they do have to request that access control variance. Third would be a access control variance for the number of driveways. As this property is under 600 feet of total frontage, they would only be permitted 1 access drive. However, on a corner lot for a current development that has 2, staff does not see an issue with maintaining 2, so we do recommend approval of that access control variance as well. And finally, the southwest driveway along Keller Street is larger than the normally allowed 30 feet. This is to accommodate kind of the unique in-out entrance that works with a bank. We've done these in the past in several locations. So they're going about 38 feet to accommodate that. You can see there is actually going to be a median separating the in from the out at this location. It goes about 30 to 35 feet back on the property, just to give a little bit of separation, make sure we don't have someone trying to kind of pull in as cars would be coming out of the southern access drive. Something that has changed from the previous site plan, I'll go back here a little bit so you can see it. So previously we had kind of 2 teller lanes, and that ATM lane sat very close to the bypass lane. There were some concerns with the lateral clearance and just how traffic would function if somebody would kind of try to sneak in and go directly into those teller lanes in that ATM lane, but possibly causing a backup onto the public right-of-way. Discussing that with the applicant, we've come up with kind of a couple of ways to hopefully address this. First is we are proposing to give them a base standard modification to reduce their front yard setback along 20th Street, giving them a little bit wider of a property to develop. With that, they're able to put in kind of a second bypass lane to give another opportunity that if a vehicle did come in off Keller Street and tried to cut over and got stopped, there would hopefully still be a little bit more room that a car could still get around them, reducing the opportunity for somebody to back up into the public right away. Ultimately, it's hard to say exactly how the street will function. Like I said, the first portion of that bypass lane is curbed. The second would be striped. Staff would anticipate that the majority of staff are going to see that striping continue around the site into the correct motion. Some people are going to cut through it. I mean, that's just the nature of some drivers. We feel with that kind of second wider bypass lane, it should helpfully reduce that chance. In conjunction with that, staff is recommending that we put a kind of a unique condition on this, that after 2 years, we reevaluate this access control variance to see if there has been any accidents or injuries reported as a result of this configuration. We've used similar language in the past when granting these things that our best guess is looks like this should be sufficient, especially with the use of a bank. We don't see it as that high traffic causing an issue, but at least this would give us an opportunity after 2 years evaluated if there is, an abnormal number of crashes or something that is a result of this. We could reevaluate other options of how to change the access into the site. So with that, there is the base standard modification that would be requested along the north property line from the required 25 feet down to 10 feet. And that's just to accommodate this larger site layout. Yes. This is the revised site plan. So getting into some other aspects of the site, they are slightly overparked with 24 parking spaces, where code would allow 17 spaces. As we've seen with previous bank requests in the past, banks do have a little bit larger of a parking load than some other similar retail uses. So with kind of keeping in character what we've done in the past, staff is recommending the 24 spaces. As with those banks having that really high peak volume at 5 o'clock at night, they do tend to accommodate that a little bit more of a parking need. Landscaping, the applicant has been, working back and forth with us on the landscape plan. The original site plan was deficient in a couple of areas for landscaping. Several modifications have been made, improving the landscaping. They were short on perimeter landscaping, or street frontage landscaping, in the past. They have addressed that in this plan. In conjunction with getting that second bypass lane, when we recommended approval of their base standard modification for the setback, it also gave them a little bit more room to do foundation screening on the north side of the building. The original plan did not include that foundation screening on the north side of the building. It was only the plantings on the west. That was code compliant, but by granting the base standard modification for reduced setbacks, it's given them an opportunity to provide even more plantings. Staff is recommending that the final landscaping plan be approved by staff, as there are a few deficiencies still on this plan with some island trees and things of that nature, but nothing that can't be worked through. No stormwater management plans have been provided at this time, so the applicant will, during the site plan review process, have to provide their updated stormwater management plans to the Department of Public Works, and will be taken care of at that time. The site is relatively large and does have some green space remaining, so there should not be an issue addressing the stormwater concerns for the property. There are 2 base standard modifications being requested in terms of site lighting. At both the north access drive along 20th and then kind of that shared access drive on the south side of their property, the applicant is proposing to exceed the 0.5-foot candlelight at property line. So for the north, the reason this request is coming in is the actual street lights, and you can kind of see it over here on the smart board, are significantly away from the property line. So if we cut off at 0.5 at the property line, we're in sense going to have kind of a dead zone between the actual street lights and their property line. So they're asking to up it to kind of light that dead zone area. Staff feels that's a perfectly reasonable request and feels it would be appropriate to grant that base standard modification. Same thing at the south, where they have kind of that shared access with the facility to the south of them, giving a little bit higher of a lighting standard there. They're just barely over 0.5 at that location. Does make sense as you have that internal access point. We do want to make sure it's very appropriately lit to not cause any issues. So staff recommends approval of that base standard modification as well. Getting into kind of the building elevations and signage. Here are the proposed building elevations. The building elevations are in compliance with the code requirements for Class 1 materials. It is, again, similar to the last bank we looked at, it's mainly glazing and some stone and brickwork. Applicant has provided wall signage, but no building freestanding signage. So their wall signs were laid out in the staff report. All 4 of the walls are within the zoning code requirement for on-site signage for walls. Staff recommends that any future signage, so if they choose to do monument or freestanding signage, will need to comply with the suburban mixed-use standards. Here we do line out kind of the building materials so you can see what those are. Again, all far exceed the 50% requirement for the zoning district. Here's some renderings provided by the architect so you can see a little bit of what the bank possibly will look like. And then, so staff is recommending approval, subject to a number of conditions. Condition number 1, approval of the access control variances to reduce the lateral clearance and the number of access drives for a period of 2 years, at which time staff will re-review those. Any changes to change in use shall be required to obtain a new specific plan amendment. We put that in there mainly related to the access drive, the access control variances. We understand that the bank should not have a negative impact with granting of the access control variances, but say in 5, 10, 15 years, if this property would be to change to another use, we would want to be able to look at the access control issue for that specific use. Based on modification to go from 14 to 24 parking spaces. Number 4 is the new one that was added with the revised staff report, and that is to reduce the front yard setback along 20th from 25 feet to 10 feet. Base standard modification to exceed the 0.5 candlelight on the 20th and southern joint access drive. Final stormwater management plans provided during the site plan review process. Final building elevations approved by the Department of Community Development. This is, again, because similar to the last bank, after we want to have a little bit of leeway in there that if the plans brought are substantially compliance with what we show, and we'd be able to approve them. But we want to make sure, similar to Bank First National, if they would change significantly between now and actual construction, we would want them to come back to you for approval. applicant to revise the landscaping plan to the 480 points of street frontage landscaping. Looks like they've actually already done that. Final landscaping plan approved by Department of Community Development. That's just, there are still a couple of outstanding items, relatively minor though, that staff can approve. And that final signage plans be approved by the Department of Community Development. Again, that's because they have only on-site, on-building signage shown, and they aren't showing any of the freestanding signage.
So basically, these 2A and 2B, you did them at one time.
Correct.
So when we vote, we'll be voting on both of them together.
And
Unless-
2B is, we kind of outlined the,
All right.
the issues there for you already.
Okay, other technical questions? Kathy?
I don't know why I didn't notice this before, but go back to the site plan. Yeah, right there is fine.
Okay.
The bypass lane creates, I'm gonna call it a knob. Why does that go up so steeply, instead of going a little bit more rounded
More gentle.
at the bottom?
We
You're
can,
narrowing traffic, it looks like, into maybe 2 lanes into 1 lane.
If I could interject, I'm the architect, I'd be happy to speak.
Sure.
we generally have a 24-foot maximum access drive requirement, but the architect can probably better answer that.
Hi, my name's Andrew Kerr. I'm with Rinka. I'm the project architect for Associated Bank. What we try to do on the drive-throughs after the cars exit is we try to collect that traffic down into a little bit of a, we're intentionally bottlenecking the traffic so that we don't have too many cars starting to stack side by side. We're trying to get that down to the single
okay.
row of traffic so that they're proceeding around the site. What we're really trying to avoid is, we get 2 cars side by side. This guy thinks he's going to go right down into the Arby's. This guy thinks he's going to go left up into he's got to go around to 20th Street, and now we've got a potential collision point. So we try to, through that knob and through the smaller knob there on the north, we try to encourage people to zipper and blend into a single line of traffic.
Makes sense, thank you.
Thanks. Other technical questions? Okay, seeing none, anyone here, you want to stay up there as long as you're here? Do we have any questions for the
Happy to.
architect? Besides that one?
All the area to the east that's past the driveway down is going to be grass.
Yep, and that's going to remain as grassed area, yeah. Mhm.
All right, thanks. Anyone else here to speak to this item today? Okay, back to the commission.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All right, call the roll, Mina.
Crop,
Aye?
Cummings,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
Kiefer,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
Groth,
Aye.
Wojtek.
Aye.
Motion carried 8-0.
Any other business items before we go to workshop, friends? Anybody?
Was that for A and B or?
Yep.
Okay.
We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So, second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll
All right.
just shut that off.
On to workshop.